Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope you guys are all having a great week. And for me, I am pre-recording this, but tomorrow I go back to work after Thanksgiving break and I'm dreading it. I just don't know if I'll ever get over this dread to go into work. I don't know. It's just hard after break to go back to work, but I'm looking forward because I've only got 3 weeks of work until Christmas break. And I'm sure that you know in what sector I work in since I get a Thanksgiving and Christmas break. Anyways, I hope you're having a great week and I hope that you're managing to still get outside and outdoors to do the things you love despite it being a different season now. Let's head into the morbid outdoors. When a seasoned wildfire spotter fails to check in for her scheduled radio call, her supervisor ventures out to make sure that all is okay. When he arrives, she was gone and has never been seen since. How did she disappear from her remote post at Athabasca Lookout? It's been 16 years, and this case remains unsolved. So I actually have had a weird fascination with wildfire towers or lookouts since I was a kid. I think when I was a kid, I saw it was a scary movie and it was on Lifetime. So it really wasn't that scary, but as a kid, I was terrified. And it took place in a wildfire lookout tower. And I think it was made after this. So I'm sure that Stephanie's story is the one that inspired that movie, but it was terrifying because if you think about it, you are in a remote area alone and anything could happen. So I remember that movie from when I was a kid. But I actually, when my husband and I were living in Oregon, we actually spent a weekend in a fire tower in Oregon. They're not really used anymore because we have drones and all kinds of technology, but some of them are still safe to stay in. And I know that there's a few in and around Mount Rainier National Park that friends have hiked to and stayed in. The U.S. Forest Service has some available for rent, and that's what I actually did. So some of them in Washington, it's first come, first serve. You hike up there, you can stay up there. But the one that we did, it had to be easily accessible because my husband has cerebral palsy. So it was one that you could drive up to, park at the end or at the base of it. And then there was a pulley system. So you put all your stuff in and someone was at the top and there were no stairs. It was like a freaking ladder to get up there. It was so tall and it was so windy the weekend that we were staying. I was terrified. And I do not like heights. So this experience for me was really cool. It was kind of once in a lifetime. I feel like a lot of people don't get that experience to stay in a fire lookout tower. I never thought I would have that experience until I found out that the U.S. Forest Service does rent the safe ones out. The one that we stayed in was in Southern Oregon, and you look out and just a 360 view of just forest, and it was so beautiful. and the wind was so scary and it was so cold. But it was a really, really cool experience. So if that's something you're interested in, I would check it out. It was super fun. I think it'd be fun to take kids to do, except for having to wake up in the middle of the night and maybe go all the way down to use the bathroom. That was not enjoyable, but it was a really, really unique experience. And I highly recommend that everyone that's interested in that should do it. It was awesome. So first, we're going to talk about the bad reviews. I only found one bad review about the Firetower, and this reviewer said, "The view is okay, but nothing special. Nothing you wouldn't see from the road. All in all, we were not amazed." And so this person, you can hike up there. So that's why this person said, I could see it from the road. Now, this story takes place in William A. Switzer Provincial Park in Canada. And these are some bad reviews about the Provincial Park. "This place sucks ass. Wouldn't let me in because I was in a truck. Canada is overpriced and has a horrible government. No respect for the working class. Only out to separate you from your money. Beautiful mountains that can't be enjoyed thanks to Trudeau and company. Will never go back." That was a very political one. I really don't care, but that was a negative one that I found. Overall, there were not many bad reviews of the area at all. So I don't know if it's just not super popular or frequented, but a lot of people were like, "We love camping here." So those are the only two bad ones I could find. William A. Switzer Provincial Park is a provincial park in Alberta, Canada. It's located on both sides of the Bighorn Highway, kind of between Grand Cache and Hinton. The park is situated at the foothills of Alberta's Rocky Mountains at an elevation of 4,300 feet, and it has a very small area of 36 square miles, so it's not very big at all. It was established on December 22nd, 1958, and it's maintained by Alberta Tourism, Parks, and Recreation. This park was named after former provincial member of the Legislative Assembly, William Switzer. And if you're an American listener, none of this makes sense to me either, but I'm still going to go and do the background on it. There are lots of activities, basically every single activity you could think of, like bird watching, camping, cross-country skiing, hiking, mountain biking, fishing, snowmobiling, kayaking, and canoeing, and a lot more. Now, there is a trail that goes to the Athabasca Fire Lookout Tower that we're going to be talking about today. And from All Trails, it says, quote, "Enjoy the 6.6-mile out and back trail near Brule, Alberta. Generally considered a moderately challenging route, it takes an average of 3 hours and 42 minutes to complete. This is a popular trail for hiking, but you can still enjoy some solitude during quieter times of the day. The best times to visit this trail are May through October. Dogs are welcome, but must be on a leash." End quote. There's an elevation gain of just over 1,700 feet. So if you think about it, 6.6 miles, 1,700 feet, it's really not that steep or hard of a trail, in my opinion. The Athabasca Lookout Trail is a very nice hike that goes through beautiful silver birch forest and ends with spectacular views. The first part of it are along an old road, so it's like a nice and easy walk. The trail then turns and goes straight up the side of a hill, and it's been called a relentless climb. It's nothing technical, but it is steep, so sometimes people get a little bit on that part. While the end of the trail is underneath a radio tower, there's an interpretive sign about what you are looking at, as well as of a lake that can't be seen only a couple of hundred meters earlier. So you are walking along this road and then you go straight up. There's a sign that shows you kind of what you're seeing in the surrounding views. And then you can also see a lake as well. Now, today's case is about a woman named Stephanie Stewart, and she was 70 years old at the time that we're going to be talking about in the early 2000s. Stephanie worked for 18 years as a wildfire spotter for the Alberta Natural Resources Group, which kept watch at 128 fire lookouts across Alberta and Canada. So she worked for them, and she was seasoned wildfire spotter. Like this, I mean, you might say, whoa, she was old, but she was like very experienced. Stephanie was from Canmore, Alta, and she was healthy and adventurous despite being 70. She had just cycled solo across Canada and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. In other words, she was a badass. For the previous 13 years, she spent the summer at this lookout, at Athabasca Lookout. So she was able to spend the summers on this high ridge in this northern part of the province, and she loved it. This area is on the outskirts of Jasper National Park, so if you can imagine, the scenery and view is just absolutely breathtaking. Only a desolate road leads from the valley to this 40-foot high lookout and log cabin. So I've seen pictures, and there's like a log cabin that the fire lookout people stay in. That's where they live. And then there's the tower that you climb up to spot. So it's a little bit different than the situation that I was in Southern Oregon. She was here from April to September every year, like I said, for the past 13 years. And the tower was semi-remote. It was accessible by car, but the road to get up there was extremely rocky, and it's not a road that you would just find yourself lost on or just want to drive down for fun. And it was 15 miles from the town of Hinton. Towards the end of the summer, on August 25th, 2008, at 9 p.m., Stephanie had spoken to her family members via a phone. And then the next day, on August 26, 2008, Stephanie actually failed to check in via radio for a regularly scheduled check-in. Every morning, Stephanie's supervisor at the Natural Resources Group would either make or receive a phone call from her or to her to confirm that she was okay and to update each other on the operational status. This was, everybody did this. It wasn't just Stephanie. All of the fire lookout watch people were doing this, and she missed that, and that was a huge red flag for her supervisor. So her supervisor tried calling several times, and someone did answer the phone, and whoever answered hung up on the supervisor repeatedly without saying a word. And then the phone was unplugged from its socket and the line went dead. So huge red flag. This immediately sent up alarm bells, and her supervisor became extremely concerned. This was unlike Stephanie because she had never missed a call check-in in all of the years that she had worked there. When her supervisor arrived at the lookout site, he found her truck still parked outside. First place he checked was the cabin, and when he looked and went into the cabin, he found something really strange. He found a pot of water that was left boiling on the stove unattended. But there was no sign of Stephanie. She, quite literally, it was like she had vanished into thin air. He immediately called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the RCMP, to come to the lookout and begin a search. Stephanie was officially reported missing on August 26, 2006 at 9 o'clock a.m. Authorities immediately started searching for Stephanie. Early on, it was obviously thought that maybe she'd gone out for a hike or she'd gone out for a stroll and she'd gotten lost or injured. And so a lot of people very early on were boots on the ground searching for Stephanie. The RCMP, search and rescue teams, conservation officers, and volunteers started scouring the area since she was reported missing. Police were already calling her disappearance suspicious, and I feel like that's something that U.S. investigators very rarely do from the start, because oftentimes when it comes to American cases, most of the investigators are like, oh, well, they probably are on their hike. But usually they don't say like, oh, this is suspicious, but we're about to find out why. So the reason why the authorities were saying that this was a suspicious disappearance is because some of the items were missing from her cabin. And in fact, these are the things that were missing: 2 pillows with blue covers, a burgundy bedsheet, a Navajo pattern duvet, and a gold watch. And of course, Stephanie. It was like she vanished into thin air, like I said, but it's also strange that these items were missing. And I think when we think of those items, I think your mind goes to the same place that mine does. Early on, there weren't many suspects, but eventually a suspect did come to investigators' minds. Travis Vader. Vader is currently serving a life sentence for the murder of Lyle and Marie McCann, who were 78 and 77. This couple disappeared shortly after they left their Edmonton area home in their RV for a camping trip in BC in July of 2010. Travis was a drug addict, and he actually had a history of arson, theft, and weapon charges. And he killed the McCanns during a robbery just west of Edmonton. After murdering the couple, he disposed of their bodies in the woods and then burnt their RV. The McCanns' remains have never been found. Even now, it's been, 14, almost 15 years, and their remains have never been found. He was apparently in the area of the lookout when Stephanie disappeared. Travis Vader has never revealed where the remains of the two victims are, and his appeals and paroles have constantly been denied due to him not showing authorities where he disposed of this couple and for showing no remorse. If Travis was in the area like authorities say he was, I think it's extremely plausible that he is the culprit behind Stephanie's disappearance. Because Stephanie disappeared in 2006, Travis wasn't on the radar until 2010 when he murdered the McCanns. This is interesting that the police would look at this case and be like, he could be our guy because he has made human remains disappear without a trace before. And I think that if they know that Travis was in this area, I think it's very likely that he is behind Stephanie's sudden disappearance. The Canadian government, along with the union Stephanie was a member of, actually offered a $20,000 reward to anyone who could provide information leading to an arrest or conviction in what was now presumed a homicide. Stephanie's disappearance actually led the province to tighten security measures at its 128 fire watch towers, according to a newspaper article I found at that time. Now, this was in 2006. I don't know if they're still used like they were back then, today. I don't know if they're used now how they were back then, but it's possible that they are. The new safety measures included self-defense training for fire watchers and new two-way radios with panic buttons. They also installed signs so basically, before there were signs that pointed visitors towards popular lookouts. They took those down, and lookouts with road accesses actually started to have locked gates to try and dissuade people from driving up there. I'm shocked that this wasn't in place before she disappeared, but that's just me, because if you look at, this is someone who's remote, who doesn't have a lot of access to the outside world, that's a perfect place for a crime. And I know a lot of people would have seen that and realized that, and I think that's exactly what happened in Stephanie's case. Let's talk theories. One theory suggested that Stephanie might have stumbled upon a drug-related activity. This theory was based on the rise in drug trafficking in rural Alberta, with traffickers using secluded areas for their operations. However, the RCMP found no definitive evidence connecting Stephanie's disappearance to such activities. One of the first theories was an animal attack, but that was quickly ruled out. Other theories emerged, such as possible medical emergency or accident, but those were similarly discounted. I think one we always have to look at for every single case is, did Stephanie run off to start a new life? Her Dodge Ram truck was parked on site, so I don't think that happened, but I just wanted to bring it up. The area is pretty isolated unless someone came and picked her up on the highway. I think murder is the most plausible answer to Stephanie's disappearance. A compelling theory considers that someone who knew Stephanie or knew her routine visited her that morning. This person might have tricked her into opening the door or assaulting her under the guise of distress. Given the lack of forced entry and the isolated location, it's plausible that the perpetrator was familiar to Stephanie. And I think this theory is probably the most valid theory, and then including murder, obviously, because where is Stephanie? But what I find interesting about this theory is that there was no forced entry into the cabin. So whoever came in, she let in. And that is, I think, a huge key to this case. The Athabasca Fire Lookout Tower was about 3 miles off of a major highway. People could drive up there and look over the valley extending to the edge of the Rocky Mountains. However, since Stephanie's disappearance, access to the lookout from the road has been blocked, to the public. Her friend Robin Slater said her perfect place was the lookout, where she tended a huge garden, embroidered, painted, and read stacks of books. She welcomed the many visitors who came to her lookout. Stephanie was truly a hell of a woman, said her daughter, Lori. She's very strong and very capable. The tower life is her life. Stephanie's body nor the missing cabin items have ever been found. Was it random, unexplained murder in the wilderness, or something else happened in the Fire Lookout Tower in that isolated part of Alberta? In 2018, 12 years after her disappearance, the RCMP launched a renewed search with a team of over 100 people. They focused on areas like Jarvis Lake and Highway 40, but still found no new evidence. Despite the efforts, Stephanie remains missing and her case is unsolved. Stephanie Stewart's disappearance remains a haunting mystery. Despite extensive searches and various theories, the lack of definitive evidence keeps the case open. The Major Crimes Unit continues to hold out hope that new technology or forthcoming information will eventually solve the case. I think it's absolutely tragic that Stephanie died somewhere where she loved, and some people might say she probably would have wanted it that way. I don't know. We don't know. But I think it's terrible that she loved that place so much, and obviously something very, very awful happened in that cabin, and her life was most likely taken that day. If we're talking about Occam's razor, she probably was murdered that day. And if she wasn't, she would be 84 years old today. And she lived a very full life and she loved the outdoors. But to know that her life was probably taken by someone who was manipulating her is just absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know if you've heard of this case before, but I heard it, a couple of years ago. And this is one of the cases that absolutely still haunts me to hear about, because where is Stephanie? And I don't know, the fire lookout, it's just an added level of creepy, right? So I hope that the Major Crimes Unit, that DNA technology is able to be used or someone comes forward with more information. Now, one thing I couldn't find is if they found any blood or DNA evidence. There were no reports of that online. However, we all know that most investigations keep things close to the chest to protect the integrity of the investigation. So I can only hope that they're able to use touch DNA technology in the near future to solve this case. If you have any information on this case, call the Hinton RCMP at 780-865-2455, or you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. As always, recreate responsibly, and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.